This video is about subsections, paragraphs, and flow. It corresponds to the last part of Section 7.4, Section 7.5, and Section 7.6 of Applied Analog Electronics. Subsections are just a finer level of structure than the sections we talked about in previous video. You can have numbered subsections, even sub-subsections if you need them. The important consideration here is that each subunit should have a name, and it should be a name that really tells you clearly what's in that section or subsection or sub-subsection. If you can't name what's there, maybe it doesn't belong as a single unit. Maybe it needs to be broken up into different subunits. If it's several different concepts mixed together, maybe you need to separate them. Or if it's just, well, there's only one or two sentences here, it's not a big enough thing to have a name, then maybe it doesn't deserve a number. So think about sort of how big a chunk you need in order to give it a name and a number. If you're going to do subsections, taking a section 1 and breaking it into 1.1 and 1.2, you should always make sure that you are indeed breaking something bigger up. You can only go to a next level deeper subsections or sub-subsections if you've got two or more at that level. So it's always a result of breaking something up, not just, oh, well, here's a small thing, I'll just go one level deeper and make it its own number. You can't have 1.1 without a 1.2. You can't have a 1.1.1 without a 1.1.2. You've always got to have two or more at a given level. It's the same rules that you had if you ever took outlining in high school. The one level deeper has to be two or more because it's a subdivision of what was already there. If it's just amplification of what's already there and not subdividing it, then don't go another level deeper. Okay, subsections, fairly simple concept. Paragraphs. Paragraphs are an even finer level of structure than sections and subsections. Nearly always, your sections and subsections should be more than a paragraph long. Paragraphs break up a longer chunk of text into units, each of which has its own concept. And that concept is embodied in the topic sentence. The topic sentence in technical writing is the first sentence of the paragraph. We start by saying what we're talking about, and then provide some supporting data, some amplification of the concept, but it's all closely related to the initial concept. Sometimes students get long, rambling paragraphs where they start on one idea and then just sort of free associate their way through lots of different concepts. That's bad technical writing. You're not trying to write James Joyce's Ulysses. It's not a stream of consciousness that you're trying to achieve. You're trying to get separate, discrete concepts that somebody can read and understand. And the best way to do that is to pay careful attention to your paragraphing. If your paragraph's getting very long, look at it, and is it really all on one topic? Is the first sentence of that paragraph really everything else in the paragraph closely connected to that? Often you'll find that it's not, that somewhere along the way you shifted what you were talking about a bit. Break the paragraph at that point and say, okay, I've got a new paragraph now, here's the new topic, and split your concepts up so that each paragraph has a clear topic sentence. One of the best things you can do to practice learning about topic sentences, if you're not really comfortable with the idea, is to take a piece of writing that you found good, something that you read easily and understood what was going on and didn't have to struggle to read what was there. And then take a look at the paragraph structures of it. Look at each paragraph and say, is this first sentence a topic sentence? Is everything else in that paragraph supporting that topic sentence? And supporting doesn't necessarily mean agreeing with. You can have something where you present a contradictory notion or something later in the paragraph. Though quite often if you want to do a compare and contrast sort of argument, you'll end up having separate paragraphs for the different arguments that you're trying to compare. Okay, so topic sentences are probably the most important missing skill for paragraphing for a lot of students. It's really making sure that every sentence that you've got supports that first one in the paragraph. That's really closely connected with it in some way. And make sure that the first sentence really is the topic and not just sort of some vague introduction and then the topic, the main point of the paragraph, is buried somewhere inside. Make sure it's the first sentence, that the main point is always first. That's not true of all styles of writing, incidentally. There are some styles where you will have topic sentences in different places in the paragraph. The first position is very common. Some styles, you will occasionally get a paragraph where the topic sentence is in the last position. It comes as sort of a surprise, a revelation. That's not the case in technical writing. Technical writing, we nearly always have that topic sentence in the first position. Okay, go through some writing that you like, find the topic sentences, see the structure, become aware of it, so that you can look at your own writing in the same way and become aware when you're violating that structure. Okay, flow is another thing that we want to talk about, and flow means a lot of different things. It's another thing that makes reading easy, that you don't stumble over, gee, suddenly there's something new here, that everything sort of goes together and you go from one concept to the next and to the next and to the next, and it just seems to flow. That's why we chose that word for the phenomenon. And the way you achieve flow is to make sure that your concepts are connected, that you don't jump around and say, oh, here's an idea, here's an idea, here's an idea, and just sort of all over the place. That sort of writing is very common when people are making notes to say, okay, I've got to get this idea in, I've got to get this idea in, I've got to get this idea in. Don't turn those notes in as a draft. Okay? Those notes, find to create them, and free association stuff often gets you stream of consciousness stuff, gets you random ideas in random order. Don't turn that in. Free association, free writing, that's not something that's ever should be seen by anybody but yourself. Take a look at the ideas you've got and try to organize them. Try and figure out, okay, what are the main points here? Those should become the topic sentences for my paragraph. How do I strengthen this main point here? What do I have to say to make it clear to people? Put that in as the remaining sentences of that paragraph. And then think about, well, what order do I want to say these things in? What do I need to say first? What comes later? The order of things is a big chunk of what makes for good flow, is that things that people need to know before they can understand a concept have come earlier. You don't have, here's an idea, and later on I give you something you need to know in order to understand what it is I just told you. Put the stuff in an order where things that you need come before the place you need them. That's not enough to get good flow, though. You can still have very choppy writing if you just toss things down, even if they're in the right order. If you just toss them down one after another, sort of it doesn't flow. It's very staccato, very choppy. And the way you avoid that is the little trick that can be used for connecting sentences. It can be used for connecting also paragraphs, sections, chapters, any level of your writing. And that is old information before new information. And in fact, the idea is that each individual sentence, each individual paragraph, each individual section has internally an old info to new info flow. And that's not always easy to achieve. In fact, one of the reasons why passive voice sometimes gets used is to turn a sentence around so that what was the object of the sentence becomes the first thing in the sentence. Because if that object was the old information, the stuff that you'd already introduced, then you want to start your sentence with that old information. If the old information is going to be the subject of the sentence, then it comes first naturally. But if the old information would have been the object of the sentence, then you sort of use passive to turn the sentence around to move that into the subject position so it could be first. A lot of people have gotten into the habit of using passive for everything, and that's really bad style also. We'll talk about that in a later video. But there are times when it is appropriate, and most of them are to get this ordering of information, so that anytime you want to say something new, you don't just blurt it out, but you connect it to what's gone before. Okay. The best way, again, to see this is to take a piece of writing that you found easy to read, where things flowed smoothly and you went from idea to idea without stumbling, and take a look at the individual sentence structures and say, okay, what's the beginning of this sentence? How does it connect to the previous sentence? What's the new information in this sentence? And you'll find that in most of the cases where you had that smooth flow and easy reading, you will see that the beginning of each sentence somehow refers back to what just came before, and the end of the sentence introduces new material. That new material then is often referred to at the beginning of the next sentence. And so that gives you a smooth flow where it's always going from one thing to another without jumping. You don't want to have a sudden subject change right at the end of a sentence. Same thing for topic sentences of paragraphs. When you're doing the topic sentence of the paragraph, you introduce the main concept, and that main concept then gets expanded in the subsequent sentences, each of which will usually refer back in some way either to the immediately preceding sentence or all the way back to the topic sentence of the paragraph. When you get to the next paragraph, it'll generally refer back to the previous paragraph right at the beginning. And so your topic sentences nearly always will start with something from the previous paragraph, followed by the new thing that you're introducing. Not always. Sometimes you do have to do a major break in flow, and you're starting over on a new topic. That's often where a section break goes. So that if you've really got a new topic, give it a title. Make it a new section. If it's just a continuation of the previous topic but in a somewhat different direction, connect it to the previous thing. So this is something that takes practice. Flow and structure are not automatic, natural things for everybody. If you look at what people do in speech, you'll see a lot of flow, but not much structure. Similarly, in writing, if people just write like they talk, the thing will be a rambling mess. You need to spend some extra effort to try to structure what you have to say, to figure out where to break things up, to make them more digestible units and more findable when somebody's looking down a page to try and find some material that they thought was somewhere on that page. If they've got the main points in the topic sentences, they generally only have to look at the first sentence of each paragraph to find the material they're looking for, and then read that paragraph more carefully to get the information. So it's an aid to the reader. That's what both structure and flow are about. It's not about helping you as a writer, it's putting more work on you as a writer, but it's helping the reader to really understand what it is you're trying to communicate and to be able to find and digest those things. So again, practice and look at other people's writing. Look at writing that you had found easy to read and try to reverse engineer it. Try to figure out how the writer achieved that ease of reading, because that's really what you want to emulate.